All right, welcome back, YouTube. This is Tim Cain, career advice from Adam Savage. The previous video that we watched, he mentioned this and how he got a lot of negative comments about it. So I'm curious to see what he talks about. Let me pause Skyrim music there.
Hi everyone, it's me, Tim.
Hi, Tim.
Today I want to talk about some career advice from Adam Savage.
If you guys
Yeah,
don't know, by the way, Adam Savage was one of the main people on MythBusters, and he has been on a whole bunch of shows and stuff nowadays, right? Very famous engineer.
yes, Mythbusters, Adam Savage. I'm a huge Mythbusters
Me
fan,
too.
and because I have a YouTube subscription, I've ended up watching quite a number of YouTube channels, and one of them is Adam Savage's Tested. By the way, it's a really good channel. You should watch it. Uh, this particular video I'm making after I just watched Quit Taking It Personally, which I'll link below, which is one of several pieces of advice that Adam Savage gave on your career. Basically, he gave career advice to people who were sending in questions. And I wanted to talk about it because as I watched this video, I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly from my own career. Oh yeah, that's exactly what happened there. So I just want to talk about this. And also, I loved his first one, which he calls Q-tip. So I want to talk about the three big pieces of advice he gave during that video.
Okay.
And I want to talk about how it very, very much matches my own advice I would like to give about the game industry.
I think that there probably is some overlap between mine and his too. So me and Tim are both. There was a previous video that Tim made about, I think it was like jobs, careers, and callings, something along the lines of that, where Tim talked about the three types of people in the game dev industry, and I think that this is true for many industries, where for some people it's their job. They come in, they get paid, they go home, and for other people it's their career. So they don't, it's not really about game dev, it's just about them going higher up on the ladder and, trying to make the best games they can, but because it helps the company, makes them more money, whatever. It's not about games. And the third people, like me and Tim, are this is our calling, this is our passion. We're trying to make the best games we can because we love it. We love every piece of it. And I think that that's where a lot of um the issues arise, especially with communications and interactions with people who are job and career people, where we do sometimes take things personally. We have a lot of emotional investment in what we're doing, and we cannot remove that, or it's very difficult to remove that from a situation. And so sometimes when that is stepped on, or when that feels like it's been insulted or taken advantage of, that we can feel pretty badly. And people who have that emotional divestment from their job, being a game dev, may not feel that or may not have to worry about that. They might be the ones to tell you, as the passionate person, to stop being so invested. Just don't try to cause a problem at work. Just let the game get made, and we can try to make it better in the next one. Don't cause a ruffle. Don't voice your problems, and it won't work for me. It won't work for me because my goal is to try to make the best game I can. And if there's something that's hindering that or preventing that from being made, I can't separate those two things. I cannot stop and turn that part of my brain off. Are there a lot of career people in game dev? Seems like the wrong industry for it. There are a lot more than I ever thought there would be, and a lot more than it might seem like. Especially now because there's so much money in game dev. I almost find that it depends on the company, right? And it depends on the game that's being made, but I would say about half of the people or more in game dev that I've met are not in this for the passion. Or they have lost the passion somewhere along the way and maybe either feel like they will never get it back, or they don't know how to take the right risks to have the career that they want. Yeah, passion gets killed really fast. It does. It does. And if you have to be prepared that if you are the type of person who is very passionate and wants to make the best games you can, you are going to have a hard time holding certain positions or holding certain jobs for very long periods of time. You'll have trouble talking to certain people in the industry, especially people who are just the money, the suits, the money grubbers. Do you think people started as the type 3 passionate dev and slowly transitioned to the just a job? Yeah, some people, yes. Yeah, if they don't get out of game dev because once they learn that it's very what's the right word? It's like not dangerous. It's just not very nice to people who are passionate. If they don't leave, they'll become what's the word? Disenfranchised, disenchanted. So don't ruffle feathers. They will tell you not to. I don't agree with it. I think that if you're ruffling feathers in trying to make the best game you can, and you're doing it in a reasonable way, the people who take that wrongly probably aren't there to make best games they can, in most cases. Even if an industry thrives on foolish individuals who have a lot of passion get exploited for it, then their light just dies out and become husks, or they start their own studio and use those negative experiences to make good games. But I agree. I think that the game dev industry is so challenging. It is so competitive that it fucks you. It really just bends you over the barrel and rams it into you. And if you just want to deal with that and give up, you can. Or you can fight against it. I don't know. I don't like where this analogy is going, but let's just say it's really bad for people who are passionate. You need to find like-minded individuals, and you need to find those smaller teams probably that are going to be created by people who are passionate.
Having a career there. So the first one is called Q-Tip, which stands for Quit Taking It Personally. And he talks about basically not taking work events really personally, especially bad things that happen. You can learn from that, and I've talked about lessons from failure. My example, though, that I want to talk about is I've talked in a few videos, and I'll link them below, about somebody who worked for me, but he did something my boss told him to do that I didn't want done, that they both knew I didn't want done.
Repeat that, because I think I've had this exact same situation. I think I've talked about this exact same situation before.
I've talked in a few videos, and I'll link them below, about somebody who worked for me, but he did something my boss told him to do that I didn't want done, that they both knew I didn't want done, and he was told not to tell me, and how all that stuff went down.
I've had that exact, like nearly exact same thing. So it wasn't somebody who worked for me, but it was actually my superior at the time who he didn't know the design of the game, but he was in the position of my superior as a designer. So he should have deferred to me, who knew the systems well. And instead of doing that, he heard some information from the publisher that he didn't share with me, and then proceeded to completely gut a system without putting the proper replacements in. So the game loop failed to be playable. And I didn't hear about it until after it was complete, and QA was asking me, a friend, now, and he was in QA, asked me if this is the way that it should work because the design document says something different. And I was never informed of this. I was never even asked, hey, is it okay if we do this because the publisher has this problem? It was just done. And it took about 1 week to fuck things up, and I was told that it would take 3 weeks to fix things back to the way they were. And this was like right before an important milestone. I was livid. I was so angry with that. And he was just trying to defend it. Like, both of the individuals that were involved in it were trying to defend it as being better. And I'm not saying that I, as the designer, am right. But, it's you have to then prove why that the system was supposed to be overhauled. And in order to overhaul it, you need to properly design it. But it was never properly designed. It was just gutted. And now the gutted solution is way worse than even what we already had before, which wasn't that great. Oh, I don't want to get into it. That was a mess. That was an absolute mess. Thankfully, it never happened again, but it was something that should never have happened in the first place. I think that depends what you do. You mean people working as indies or people working for teams? I mean, I think what was I talking about in general with that? Oh, about like passion. I think that you can find bigger teams with passion. I think it's easier to find smaller teams with passion. It's easier to get those groups of individuals together. It's why you often see a lot of those AAA amazing developers, right? Like those 30-year passionate individuals will leave to start smaller companies because they don't want all that corporate overhead of people who don't care about games. They want to work in a small team of really knowledgeable individuals making games and loving them. Companies I definitely can agree that people are foolish for indies. I think it can be a little different because I believe that indies should work 100% to fulfill their dreams. And whether they flop or not is always their particular goal. I mean, this can happen with anybody. And there can be passionate people on AAA teams, there can be passionate people, and there can be dispassionate people on indie teams. It all comes down to like what we were talking about before, like hiring practices. You need to hire people that have that goal. I will not hire somebody who is not passionate about games. Simple. And I've been told that I cannot build a team realistically doing that. I disagree completely. I think it's really easy to find developers who have been disenfranchised from the industry, who still have that spark of passion, but they've been exploited, they've been unheard, they've been told to shut up, they've been told to just do their job, and they're just looking for that group that they can join where they can just express their creativity and make the best game that they can. I think there are a lot of developers like that that don't feel like they will ever have that opportunity. I'm not passionate about games, but look how good I can code. Here, hire me. Yeah, I mean, I've worked at places like that where they'll just hire somebody. Oh, you have the most experience, you're hired. And then they end up with this cultural divide between passionate people and people who couldn't give one fuck about games. And you can make a game like that. I promise it's not going to be a good one. Because those people who don't give a shit are never going to voice their concerns. They might not even play that many games. They may not know how to compare what they're working on with other competition or other games in the genre. And they're never going to voice any of those concerns. And if they're not going to voice those concerns, you might be missing something very blatant to other people, but you have tunnel vision with. And now your game isn't going to be as good as it could be with somebody who knows this genre, who plays a lot of games, that can say, yeah, I don't like how this feels.
And I kind of want to tell you what I hope he took out of that, and I wanted you guys to get from it, which is, look,
you're right, Woot. It does.
That was a bad situation, and it was a bad situation created by my boss. The moment he went to someone on my team, told them to do something I didn't want him to do, and they did it, and then he said, "Don't tell me," even though I was literally going to find out the very first day that I played the game, which was the next day. And this guy who did it knew I played the game every morning.
It's really stupid.
So what I pulled from this is, look, I can't control my boss. I can't. This is something my boss had done to me before and to other game directors before. So I couldn't even take it personally because it wasn't him going, I'm going to screw over Tim. It was like, just something he did. If he wanted something in the game, he didn't care if the directors didn't want it.
I mean, I agree that you can't take that personally, especially because you know it wasn't personal. I don't know how you would resolve that situation with a boss like that, because that is just horrible behavior from a boss. And then, of course, the game would get delayed because you'd have to fix that and they'd blame it on you or something, right?
He found ways of getting it in. And I'd watched him do this for years on other people's projects, and then he did it on mine. Now, I can't control him. I literally can't. He's above me. But then I realized I can't control my employee either. They can do whatever they want. The only thing I can do is tell my employees what I expect from them, look at what they do, and then say, this is not what I asked you to do. Now, they can have the reasons or excuses or explanations, whatever you want to say, about why they did it. But they can't for one moment say, you can't excuse me of doing this. No, you did something I didn't want done, and you knew it. It's not personal. I'm not like angry at this guy personally. It's professionally, as his boss, you did something wrong. Admit it. Tell me you're not
Take
going to do it again,
responsibility for
and
it.
let's move on
Yeah,
from this. Because if
exactly.
that had kept happening, what am I supposed to do when my boss goes to one of my employees and keeps having them do things I don't want them to do? I can't stop the boss, but I can try to stop the employee.
I mean, I agree. Like, that's such a tough situation too, where it keeps happening. Happening once, it's an accident. Fine, we can move on. Emotions can settle. New day, new slate. But if it keeps happening, that's such a tough situation because you're then telling a somebody below you who the person above you could fire or potentially get fired to not do the thing that your superior is asking them. So now you've almost created an environment where you can't trust the hierarchy. Which is, I'm not a big fan of hierarchies in the first place, but there is some hierarchy that's needed. Somebody needs to have that responsibility and that ownership, right? And the creative director is that person. In this case, Tim was the person. So really, the boss should have deferred to the game director, Tim, to make the right decisions, and therefore the underling, the employee, should be doing what the boss, in this case Tim, was asking him to do, and the boss above that shouldn't be interfering. That's how the hierarchy should work. But now you've created a really bad situation for the employee, and it's not Tim's fault, right? It's the boss's fault. The boss is the one that's fucking this all up. You've created a situation with the employee where the employee now doesn't know what to do, and if they they have to say no to one of these people, and if they say no to this one, bad things happen, and they say no to this one, bad things happen, or they could happen. So just such a horrible situation to be in for Tim and for the employee.
And since when a game comes out, the game director is held responsible for all of it, I have to do something.
Yep.
So the only thing I could think of doing was I'm going to monitor everything you do. I'm going to talk to you if you ever do something again that I don't want you to do. And then we're going to HR about it because I've warned you. Now, a lot of you are like, this isn't fair and all this. You're right. It isn't fair. My boss is creating an unfair situation.
Yes.
But don't take it personally. This is a business problem. This is a problem in communication and hierarchy, however you want to frame it, whatever your favorite lens is. Yes, I can report him to HR. If my boss is going to do what I think he's going to do, her have that thrown away. Her have it won't affect the guy's career. But maybe he won't, which will make somebody think twice about doing something for someone above them if that person doesn't have their back later. Think about your career long term. Do you want to be known as the person who does things like this? Think about it. Don't take it personally. Learn from it. Which,
Yeah, and I've been in the. I'm an impulsive person, right? And if I see a problem, I'm going to raise it, and I think that some people view that as a plus. Like some people I've worked for, bosses view that as a plus. They're like, I'm glad that I can rely on you to say things the way they are because we just need to resolve them, right? I'm not raising problems to be the problem person. I'm raising problems so that we can find a solution to it. But I've worked for other people where they take that as an affront to the team and to themselves, where, oh, he's just causing problems and voicing issues and he's not voicing solutions. Well, sometimes I see a problem, but I don't see a solution. Like, I need to talk it through, right? There's nobody in the world that I think is going to see every problem in game dev and say, oh yes, by the way, I also know a solution to the problem we have. Sometimes it's like, no, we need to bring this into the light instead of gaslighting the rest of the team that this problem doesn't exist, which was, in this situation, what was happening. And we need to talk about it, bring in other minds, because I'm just a designer. I'm not an art director. I'm not a programming lead. I don't know potential solutions from those fields. Shut up and make me money. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what it was. It was like, then they would say, oh, well, also you're demoralizing the team. But it's like, bro, the team, number one, didn't have much morality in the first place. Not morality, but good morals in the first place. Good morals in the first place. Sorry. Many different words, many different ways to say it. And it might have been because you were overworking the programming team every single day. Maybe it was because you were making them crunch. Ever wonder that? I don't know. But gaslighting them into thinking everything is okay, nothing's wrong, nothing's on fire, don't worry about it, keep working, is also maybe a short-term solution, but it's not a long-term solution. The moment your employees know that you're willing to lie to them, lie to their faces in order to make them not feel as bad, I think that the majority of adults are going to feel horrible. They're not going to trust you. They're not going to think that you look at them like adults. Like, these people have a lot worse things happening in their life than the publisher not being super happy with the build that you just put out. Yeah, integrity is lost. Like, you've lost it. Like, I agree that we should try to keep morale high, but you don't do that by lying to them. That's not the way to do it at all. So then, of course, you get labeled the problem person. They put all of the blame on you. They say you're disloyal. And it's like, okay, well, I see exactly what you prioritize and what you value. You value lying to the team and to the people below you in order to keep morale high. Okay, not the team for me. See ya. That's why one of our values as a company is honesty, both with players and with developers.
Got me in the next thing that
Sorry, Tim.
Adam Savage said, which was late career luxuries. These are things that are stories he tells about things he did, but he only could do it because later on in his career.
Curious, Wuchek, what do you mean by the honesty trap? Before we jump into this one, because I'm very curious about late career luxury. I hear, oh man, I could go on about people that I've worked with who are like late in their careers and they have these laurels and we'll treat them differently because he's been in the industry for 20 years. He can do no wrong. Oh. But we can talk about the honesty trap first. One day your honesty might bite you back. I think that anything lost or hurt by being honest is a lot better than the alternative, which is lying. I'm not saying that being honest is the best way to always get the best outcome, but it is the way to build trust, and that even if something bad happens, those people know that you were being honest, right? Yes, if the publisher doesn't like our build and might not fund us for a month, and I have to withhold paychecks for a month or cut them back, that's not good news. That's not good news. But being honest about it, at least when the developers hear me say the publisher likes what we're doing, everything's fine, they'll trust me, because during the times where things were the worst, I still did not choose to lie to them. Even if that may make people mad at me that I have to say that or admit it, guess what? They're going to find out something like that happened anyway at some point in the future. And now they're not going to know if they can trust me when I say, yes, the publisher thinks everything is fine, everything is cool. They're going to be wondering, am I going to get my next paycheck? Did he actually mean that? So I think that long term, being honest is always the right move, even if in the short term it may get you, it may not net you positive things. I'd rather be known as the honest person who, what's a way I can phrase it? I'd rather be known as the honest person who may not always be the happiest, cheerful person in the room than the dishonest person who you can't trust. Which kind of said the same thing there, but you gotta get what I mean, right? I think being too open can be unwise. I don't know. I'm pretty open as a person, and while it may make people think that I'm a little bit weird, I don't have anything to hide. I think that's the important thing that I try to illustrate. I don't share too much about my private life, but I'm also not completely a different person. I'm not. This is not like some. You don't see a different me in front of the camera than if you knew me in real life. I am who I am. I say what I think. I try to word it well. I don't always succeed. I'm not always a diplomatic person, but I try to be diplomatic. You have nothing to hide, then show us your D. I'll show you my tax returns too. Oh, he didn't make any money and he owed the government $200. Yeah, sounds about right. Not so much hide, but rather exposing too much. But I guess, what would it come down to? What could I expose that would not be good for my team to know? I mean, if I'm hiring people that are, roughly my age, let's say 25 to 35 mostly, but probably some people 40s or 50s. what have they undergone in their life that would not be any more difficult, traumatic, or mentally taxing than some bad news at their work? And I think when they come into work, would they rather say, look, he's not the greatest boss. I've worked with people who are more organized, who are better at communicating, but he at least doesn't lie. I can at least trust him that when faced with a difficult situation, he will tell us the truth. I'd rather live like that, personally. I don't know. Expose the fact that the company is going under, they are about to be out of a job. I'd like to say that. If the company's going under, they're about to be out of a job. I'd like to say that so they can find a new job and not have to worry about, a month or two where they won't be fed. I feel like just giving everyone your personal address. Well, okay, but I think that's a little bit different than. Okay, I mean, we agree on that regard. Like, here's a picture of my penis, and also I have, a mole on my toe, and also have hemorrhoids right now. Obviously, nobody needs to know that. Nobody needs to see that. But I think when it comes to like how the business is being run, and if there's some news from the publisher, or something is going to be a little bit wonky with the payments this month because of some weird bank thing that's happening, or we're running out of money. The worst case scenario is I have to get in front of my team and say we are out of money and there's no solution. I'd rather just be honest about it, like right there in that moment. What cream do you use exactly? I would consider that to be somewhat too naive. What do you mean? Honesty, there's naivety as well. Give me an example. Oh, giving your way dress. I mean, I feel like that's different though. I will say this conversation is not talking about those things. I'm not saying you need to be honest about like you need to share everything, like being a yes man or something. Just that when somebody asks you a question related to career stuff, by the way, and company stuff, I don't think that you should hide that from your employees. That's what I mean. Tell your boss you're planning to go holiday next week after every interaction with him was bad and now he found a way to ruin it for you, and that's what you go. Well, again, if you're working for a boss that actively sabotages your vacation plans because you shared it with them, you should find a new boss. And being honest in this example, it was a good thing because it taught you that that boss was bad and you found it out sooner rather than later, and go find a new job. So again, short term, being honest wasn't so great. Long term, you know what to look out for. Okay, let's jump into late career luxury. I've been yapping. Tim, please continue.
Luxuries. These are things that are stories he tells about things he did, but he only could do it because later on in his career, he had the luxury of being able to do that because he
Yes.
was financially stable.
It's so much, yes. There is so much that you can gain by having seniority, even by being underpaid a little bit. It's one of okay, maybe it's not good to admit this, but I know that I was underpaid in the game dev industry here in Poland. And I was kind of okay with it because they could not replace me with somebody better for the same amount of price that they were paying me. And so there were some things I could get away with, some buttons that I could push, and I knew that I had immunity. Not a good thing to admit. Just saying, being in the game dev industry means you're by default underpaid. Yeah, especially game designers. Jesus Christ. But yeah, late career luxury is big. You can get away with a lot when people know that you are, 1 out of 10 versus 1 out of 1,000. If you know that you aren't replaceable, you can kind of use that as leverage. I'm not saying that you should, and I'm not saying that you should be in a company where you have to use that as leverage to get what you want. That's probably a red flag for that company that you have to be that way. But if you are in that situation, know what your leverage is, use it to your best ability, and then probably find a company where you don't have to leverage any of that bullshit in order to get what you want, where you can just speak your mind and not have to fear that you're going to lose your job or get replaced.
He had a reputation, maybe he had his own company. he mentions dropping clients as an example of that. That he had really bad clients, and he basically said, "I can't work with you anymore."
Yeah.
You cannot do this when you start.
No.
You can. This is only something you can do later when you're like, "No, no, you're coming to me, and I don't want to work with you."
And it's similar like with juniors, right? Juniors think they can be replaced because juniors can be replaced. Most people in the game dev industry can be replaced, but juniors, it's very easy to find a new junior. And so juniors will feel more afraid to speak their mind or to speak up or to showcase their vulnerabilities because they fear that that will lead them to losing their job. Some cases it will. Bad companies might do that. I think good companies though will say, yeah, it's just every single person above you has made this mistake. It is okay. Don't feel bad. It happens. Here's how to fix it. My leverage is that I code everything in Malbolge. What the Malbolge? What the hell is that?
Now, for me, I've talked on many videos about walking away from projects, about stepping down from lead or
Exactly.
director roles into lower paying, lesser responsibility
Mm-hmm.
roles, even quitting companies altogether, just turning in my
Same.
resignation and walking away.
Same.
Now, I've told all those stories. I'll link them below. You can learn from these. But these are not things I expect you to do your first or second year. I see people doing that all the time. I see people making lots of mistakes, like demanding to have a lead role or be a director or whatever, and they've been in the industry like 2, 3, 5 years, and I'm like,
I've mentioned this on previous videos. I was thrust into a lead position when I didn't feel ready for it. I'm happy. Great, great. I will learn something from this experience. But I voiced my dissent the moment they said that they were going to make me lead. I said I didn't want to be lead. They made me lead because it was necessary. And now I actually face problems in the industry when I apply for senior or regular game design positions because they will think that I am overqualified, or they might think, oh, he's going to have the attitude that he deserves to be in a leadership role, and so we're not going to hire him for anything less than that. Declined. And I hate it. I hate it. I didn't want to be made lead. I was made lead, but I don't feel ready for that yet. I want to work my way up to that. But in order to do that, I need to become a better communicator, a better teacher, a better leader. I have so many things because being in a lead role is so demanding from a responsibility standpoint. I'm also not very organized. And all those things are very necessary for a lead. And I would feel better just being a senior game designer in some cases. You seem like someone who's handled getting thrusted into well. Yeah, I get pegged all the time. So I get it. Late career luxury though does give you that opportunity to step back because you know that you are standing above much of the crowd, and your likelihood of quitting a company like that and finding another job is much higher than somebody who is lower on the experience ladder. I will say though that yeah, don't work with somebody who has the ego where they think that they've done 2 or 3 years in the industry and they have enough to be a lead. They don't. In most cases, they don't. And even if they had the attitude and the organization and the teaching skills to do it, that doesn't mean they have the experience to handle the people under them. When they need to review work or help their team solve a problem or communicate with other leads, they need to be very effective from that standpoint. If you are in a lead artist position, you need to know how to speak with game designers and lead programmers and know their pipelines and know their lingo. And if you don't know those things, you're not ready to be a lead. So, if you have a good lead, appreciate your lead more. Go up to your lead and say, you know what? You're a good lead. I appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time to do what you do. And just know that if you are not capable of being a lead, it's okay. You could be a very successful senior. You can probably make more money and have a lot less stress that way. So take that upon yourself. How do you know if you're ready to be a lead? Find a junior and try to teach them. Or just, I don't know, try to just say, hey, try to go up to like a lead and say, hey, can I see some of the stuff you do? Can I help out in any way? Take upon some of that responsibility and see if you're good at it. See if you can grow into that, because then it will signal to your lead and to the people above your lead, the people probably in charge of promoting, that you're ready to take on some additional responsibility. And maybe that lead can then move into a higher role themselves, or you can be kind of co-leads, right? And you can both do that responsibility, get paid more, and now you're both doing a little bit less work than if just one person was up there. So I don't know. Can I see what you do so that I can replace you? Then they would say no, fuck off. That's how you know that person is not ready, really good for a lead. Yes, I think any good lead would, if you said, hey, can I help you? They'd be like, oh my god, yes, please, please, please replace me. Or maybe that's a bit too much, but they would just say, yes, I would love if you could help me. Here are some tasks that I need to have organized or given estimations to. Can you help me with estimating these tasks? Here's a great question. Is it better that you consider your development team friends or purely business? At the end of the day, it is business. You are not friends. You are not family. That you are employer and employees. But that doesn't mean that you need to be cold with them. You're still humans. You're still all adults. You have your own lives and problems that exist, and you need to be empathetic. So I think purely business, but have some empathy, because that is another mark of a good leader, is being able to say, look, man, you blew up today during that meeting. Is everything okay? And be like, look, I just been having some problems at home. It's like, okay, it's okay. Take some time, get your business in order. You need to take some days off. That's fine. Take some days off, and I'll let the team know that you're not going to be available for a couple days. Fine, I'll cover for you, or we'll get person over here to cover for you during that time. And I think that a good team of adults will not try to create any drama out of that. They'll be like, okay, so clearly something was wrong. He had a bad day or something. When next we see him, we'll pretend that it didn't happen and move on. We'd rather work in a purely business team than a friend one. I'd rather work with friends, but at the end of the day, we are employer and employees. We are still friends, but this is like the layer on top that takes precedence. And we can still be friendly with each other, but it's about running a business. And I can't be giving priority or special treatment to another person just because they're a friend of mine. Manager told me before they promoted me to team lead. This, by the way, you can't have friends now because you are now a lead. As a lead, you can't have friends. As messed up as this sounds, I kind of understood what he meant to say, though it's not really 100% true. I think it's that you can be the boss and a friend, but they will look at you as a boss first and a friend second. The moment that happens, you are the person that controls their livelihood, their paycheck, their employment. They will look at you first because that overrides any of that other bullshit. It's like a can of worms, to be honest. This friend business thing, it really depends on the boundaries that you set. Yeah, on the clock is on the clock. True. Why romance between boss and employee are not allowed? Yeah, that's definitely one of the reasons. It's just kind of the way it is. I have a lot of friends that I've worked with that if we get funded, I will hire them. But at the end of the day, I need them to do what I hired them to do. And it doesn't matter how good of friends they are. If they end up being a bad teammate, gone. Then there are some individuals who will look at you as a friend first and might not really do what you say at first. Yeah, that's true. So then you would have to play the I am your superior card, which sucks, but it can happen. Yeah, absolutely. It's better to treat game development as a work job than a hobby. It really just depends. You might be in the industry because of professional reasons, right? You are a professional, you're trying to work in a team and make money as a game developer. Or you might just be in it as a hobby. In which case, money may not be a factor, you're just trying to make things for fun. But the moment that you have that dynamic of employer and employee, that will always take precedence, and it should take precedence. You don't want to end up with that close-knit team of friends where the moment that something needs to happen on like an employer-employee level, that it's now gummed up with yeah, but I'm your friend, dude. You can't do this to me. I don't, it's like, no, it's fine. I'll handle it. We've been friends. You can trust me. I'm like, well, yeah, but I need it to be done this way. That's it. It needs to be done this way because that's the way that the development is being handled. I'm the creative director. This is our focus. If you're right, we can change it. But I need it to be done this way first, and then we can iterate upon it later. Treating game dev as a hobby at the moment, it's the best thing for me. Yeah, it will soon evolve, and personally, I'll see how I will see it afterwards. Yeah, and I think that some people work really well as hobbyists and some people work really well as professionals, and it's not always, there's not always a perfect overlap. Some modders who work really well on mods in games would be horrible, horrible professional game devs because they may not have the communication skills, the organization skills, the ability to self regulate their time, to work independently that is necessary for an individual on the professional level. If you're doing it purely as a job, your goals are more oriented towards money, right, instead of fun. Yeah, and you might say that those people are better, are more stable employees. They certainly won't cause as many problems, but they also might not go out of their way to voice criticisms or to find creative solutions that will benefit the game in the long run. That's not always true. I do think that there's probably generally that's true though.
Like, really? You really think you've learned everything you need to know?
You
But this
never
is
have.
different. This is a luxury. This is being able to do that because I can afford not to get paid for 6 months.
Yep.
If you can't do that, you can't just walk away from a project or a job or even a role. These are late stage career luxuries. So basically, prove yourself first before you take drastic steps like that.
I mean, I think that goes for everything in game dev where it's better just it's what I say, it's like why don't you have a Steam page yet? Why don't you throw the game up on Kickstarter and make some money? Why don't you make more trailers or things like that? Why don't you make some YouTube videos that um, can help grow the audience? Because my goal is to prove myself by making the game. The game being good is the best key to success that I can have to try and obtain success financially and personally and with a team and with a company. All of that is dependent on the game being good. So nothing else matters. Nothing else should take up my time than pouring everything I can into making the game good. And the same thing is with yourself, like as a career development. Don't worry about being wrong. Learn what is right and question whether it is right. Always ask why and see if there's something better, a better way to optimize, to make something more efficient, to make something more fun. Always try to seek that. And as long as you're just seeking knowledge and experience and wisdom and learning as much as you can about all different aspects of game dev, I think you will find the most success from that. Everything else doesn't matter. And if somebody shits on you for, oh, well, you'd be a better developer if you did it this way or something. It's like, look, I'm going to do it this way. If I'm wrong, we'll fix it. I'll try to find a better way. But what matters is that I fail and I learn from it and I make that progress, and not that you dictate how I move forward in my career. I will find the way forward the way that I will find the way forward. I think that then becomes question, which is more important, money or the game being good? Both. The challenge is that you cannot prioritize one without ruining the other, in most cases. That's where the balance lies, is making the best game you can that will have a return on investment. And that's the difficult pill to swallow for a lot of indie devs or solo devs, where it's like, okay, you can try to make the best game that you can. You can have unlimited creativity to do and make the game that you want. This is your art. This is your decision. Nobody else can take that away from you. But if you're trying to make money from this, you might need to make sacrifices. Because at the end of the day, if your customers think that your product, your software, your game is not worth their time and money investment, you will have to adapt. And you can either stick your feet in the mud and refuse to change anything and make no money, or you can try to listen, adapt, be reasonable, communicate well, and find ways to fill the needs and expectations of the market in order to find the balance between making the game you want and making it successful financially. If it is this, you do a job to get the money you need in order for you to be able to do the hobbies that you have. So I work in IT, which gives me the money to enable me to treat game dev as a hobby and be happy and fulfilled with it. Yeah. And not as a, like in my case, I have no income. I'm spending my full time on developing the game. I need this to succeed, or else I run out of money and then have to go get a job in the industry, right? So you need to be able to balance both. Yeah. So it's like, a lot of the problem that people have with AAA publishers, right? Let's take the 400 million Concord budget. In order to spend $400 million on a game, you need to be able to make at least $400 million back. Otherwise, it's a bad investment. The priorities of the investors and stakeholders is to make money. So realistically, they want to make at least $401 million or $400 million and $1. You then need to cater your game to a wider audience and or increase the PPU, the price per unit, increase the game price. And sometimes they'll do both. Or they'll, find ways to monetize the game in there. But if it's a premium game, PPU increase, right? Increase PP, exactly. And by doing that, they end up creating a game that doesn't feel as unique or fun, or that it really is speaking to anybody in particular. It just feels like an everything game, or a game that doesn't really, it was never really, where's the target audience? Well, the target audience was 70% of gamers, because that's how many people would need to buy the game in order to make it financially successful. And now you've shot yourself in the foot. You've prioritized money over making a good game, and you've conflated good game with expensive budget. And that's not true. It's still not true. It was never true. It's it's a poor conflation. Here's my early access game 200 with unfinished everything. And yet a $200 budget could make a pretty damn good game if the game was developed well. Vampire Survivors, I doubt, had more than $10,000 in its budget if we disclude the salary of the individual making it. And guess what? They made a hell of a lot more money than Concord did. All right, continue, Tim.
But then the last one he talked about, which doesn't have a cool acronym,
Okay.
but I loved it, is basically mistakes happen in your job. They have to happen. And he talked about those happening on film sets where they're paying a whole bunch of people and they're about to film something. You've just got to keep going. And his recommendation there was to stay flexible, have options available,
Yep.
pick an option and just keep going. And also, what's very important is you don't have to blame the person who made the mistake that caused this happen right then and there.
Yes.
You can pick a moment later to talk to them privately and basically say, hey, what happened? How are we going to avoid that in the future? And if it's a pattern, you can deal with that. But in the moment, you just have to fix everything.
And I would say in most cases, it isn't a pattern, right? It's just anything can happen. You're with these people for 3 to 5 years. It's highly complex technical work. All it takes is for somebody to accidentally press a button on their keyboard and delete something that shouldn't have been deleted, and it just doesn't get seen until 3 months later when it's causing a problem. It's like, oh well. We can either sit here and waste time and money talking about who's to blame for this, or we can just say, let's fix the problem. I don't, yeah, pointing blame, not the thing. And like what Tim said, just do what you think you need to do and move forward. Focus on how you can be the best that you can be and trust your instincts in a lot of cases.
Talked about that here. I talked about how I have fallbacks in my design doc.
Yes.
So if a feature goes in but it's not working correctly, or it's really buggy, or they can't figure out how to get it in the way you're saying, you have a fallback in your design.
I do the same thing. It's usually I will maybe write something there, or I'll keep it in my mind, or I'll write it in a document where, okay, and I'll even say this to the lead programmer or something when I'm pitching the implementation of the system. I'll say, look, I think this is probably pretty good, but players might not like this aspect of it. Let's implement it, see what players feel, and if we need to change it, we'll change it. So, being able to spot those red flags as a designer is really important, and spot them far, far ahead from when they actually occur. And having design fallbacks is a very good tool for saying, okay, if this is bad, let's implement this. And you can just have that ready to go. Tim Pogface make an emote. That's a pretty good Pogface. Yeah, sorry, Tim. I paused Tim on so many imperfect frames. You know what? Let's blame Tim. Tim, you need to just not make any facial expressions during your videos. No, I'm sorry, Tim.
Oh, we can't get throwing working just right. Oh, we can't get this type of weapon done.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this part of combat is janky. You have some kind of fallback. This is something I know we can do
It's
because we've
flexibility.
done it in the past, and we can just fall back and do that. And because we've done it, I have a really good estimate for how long it will take, which means you know how long that option will take. So if you're 2 weeks out and you have a fallback that'll take 2 weeks, and the one that you're working on isn't working, you know that's when you have to pull the ripcord and jump to your fallback.
Mm-hmm.
I would highly recommend when you make your design documents that you have a page of fallbacks. They don't have to be completely detailed because there are things you've done before, but you can say, hey, if this feature doesn't make it in, here's a fallback.
It's just a starting point to say, to not cause panic, right? Where it's like, oh, players hate this. Like, okay. Here are some alternatives that we can go with, or here are some ways that we can cleanly try to trim it back or remove it without affecting other things. And not everything is going to have a fallback, but try to just think ahead is really what it means. Be flexible, think ahead, because those are the key parts of being a good designer. Is you are in many cases a problem solver. You're playing the game constantly in your head over and over and over and over, thinking about how to make it perfect and make it feel good. And in the moment, you need to be able to say, okay, my idea, shit. Here's an alternative, better. Jump off the building. I mean, sometimes there is panic, right? It's just game dev is very stressful. If it was perfectly easy to design and organize and produce a game, every single game being released would be releasing on time with no bugs and be the best game that it can be. If it worked like that.
If this feature doesn't get completed, here's a fallback. I had an entire Confluence page called Design Fallbacks on the Outer Worlds.
Smart.
Now,
I should do that too.
I take a lot of notes, and this is where I get to the other thing. You can forgive people for mistakes. In fact, frequently when people make mistakes, it's because it's either they're trying something ambitious, which is good.
Yep.
They're trying to challenge themselves, which is good.
Yep.
Or it was just, oops, anybody could have done that. It was like the fallout mistake of the less than equal instead of less than that caused caused a crash bug that took us 2 weeks to find.
2 weeks just because of a less than a less than equal. Wow. Yeah, that sounds about right. So it's like just the best thing you can do is move on, right? Because if you know that my team of 15 people all want the same thing, we want to make the best game that we can so that the company thrives, the community thrives, we thrive individually, we're all happy and safe and stable, and we all have good paying jobs. Everybody wants the same thing. Nobody is out there purposefully trying to sabotage your project. And you kind of need to remind yourself when you're emotionally invested that that's the reality in most cases. Not every case, but most cases. And so it's like, okay, let's not worry about blame. We can deal with that in the post-mortem where we can yell and bitch and complain about everything we did wrong in this game. But for now, let's fix the problem. Write down a note that you want to talk about it in the post-mortem, and then we can have that drinking party and just, find ways that we could have improved our workflow. Players such plan words cause players are more than just multiplayer. Wait, what do you mean, Woo Dragon? Worst bugs and the ones that are simplest take ages to debug and find, and then it's like Tim said. Yeah, I mean, how many times during our development streams have I been like, why is this happening? Why? 2 hours later, it's like, oh, I just forgot to hook up the node. Okay, it's working. Not a bug. Yeah, that happens. He labeled this forgive but don't forget. I think in some cases, yeah, it's just, look, turn mistakes into learning opportunities. And if it was a mistake that you want to educate, if it's something that like the person in the moment was like, oh shit, you're right, I got to be better at looking that over. They've accepted responsibility for the mistake they've caused and give them the space to actively try to better themselves and to prevent that from happening. You don't need to go up to them and say, what the hell did you do? Look before you commit your code. Because now it's like you're just being rude. You're not being helpful. They've already admitted the mistake and have said they're going to try and do better. That's all that needs to happen. That's it. That should be the end of it. They said, oops, my bad. I'm really sorry. I will try to look better before I do that thing. And maybe it's sometimes where it's like, okay, is this something we should include in our pipeline? Is this something that QA should check for in each build before the build gets approved? You see that happen all the time in game dev where it's like, oh, we caused we caused an issue that corrupted saves, and we're now going to add this to our QA, our smoke testing pipeline to make sure that this never happens again. Right? That's it. I'm sorry, boss man Joey. I'll do better next time. Right? Yeah. Poor QA. They already have so much on their plate. Don't add more shit on their plate. They do. QA also gets the brunt end of the stick in many cases. But yeah, it's like most people don't want to sabotage your project. They don't want to do poor work. If they accept responsibility for a mistake they made and make real active actions to try and prevent that from happening again, I don't think it requires any more intervention. Unless it's something that you need to check for every build, right? Where it's something that's like, okay, before anybody commits a level, make sure that you don't have this ticked. Just make sure, and a lead level designer, make sure that you're checking this before you approve the builds. That's it. So once I become the lead of Colden Chronicles, I'll be adding the sword combat. That's it. Yep.
That is a completely
That's what it takes.
forgivable mistake. But don't forget it. In other words, I still remember that.
Mm-hmm.
The reason you don't want to forget it is you don't want to make that mistake again. You don't want that person to make that mistake again. You want to learn from it. It's part of the reason I take all my notes. It's forgive but don't forget. And that doesn't mean you hold this sort of Damocles over this person. Sometimes I'm saying don't forget for your own personal growth. But as a lead, you should be being asked to write reviews of people. This is when you can look at your notes and go, I've noticed a pattern. You can go to someone and say, hey, you've had a lot of bugs this year, a lot more than the other programmers. Or you've been a lot slower than the other programmers getting your stuff done, even though the tasks were estimated to be about the same length. What's your response for that? And if they have a good response, like, hey, I talked to you about it. We looked at these tasks and it turns out they were badly estimated.
Happens.
Or,
a lot.
One of my parents passed away. Remember, I lost a month of work. Okay. But if it's just, I don't agree, whatever.
I don't know. I guess I'm a little bit slower. What you gonna do about it, Tim? Yeah, that's not the kind of attitude that you should have with your work. I mean, here's the thing: like when you're an employer, your employees are investments. I mean, it's okay. I'm not trying to dehumanize people, right? But when you think about having a company, you want your employees to get better. Like investments, you want them to start out someplace and to grow so that your company becomes better and better and better. Look at Supergiant Games. The first game they made, and they were already experienced developers, was Bastion. Great game, by the way. Highly recommend. Then they made Transistor. Then they made Pyre. Then they made Hades. Now they're making Hades 2. This is a team very highly, what's the word? They have great teamwork and great organization, and they make games that keep getting better and better and better and better and better. This should be the goal of any company. If you hold back those sorts of lessons, or you get on the case and you make people not want to grow themselves, you need to enable that growth. You need to enable that introspection so that your individuals, your employees, can get better and better day to day. And the mistakes are the bridge to that. They're the bridge between what you were here before a mistake was made and where you could be not making that mistake ever again, or being more conscious and making it very, few times in the future, right? You need to enable that bridge to be built rather than always crushing that bridge and preventing them from getting from point A to point B, saying, I'm not going to teach you, just give it to me, I'll fix it, right? Because now you're not teaching them how to do that thing themselves. You're just teaching them to remain in the same place they've always been. And I've worked in companies like that where it's like, you have no time for growth. And the person reviewing you just says, yes, it's good, or no, it's bad, do it again. There's no growth there. There's no education being done. And so the individual makes no progress. You can also choose to treat them well and just as resources. I'm just saying that you should treat your employees like humans, yes, but also consider them as investments to your company, and that you want to grow your investments. And how do you do that? You teach them, you train them, you give them enough room and creativity to challenge themselves. And a lot of people in the industry, especially if they're passionate people, will want to naturally challenge themselves to become better. And if you don't give them that room, they might feel stifled. They might find another place to work at, or they might just turn off. They might quiet quit. And I've done that before. I have quiet quit before. I didn't know that's what it was at the time, but I did that because they were not giving me any room to challenge myself. Hades team basically built their Bastion game. I mean, it's pretty much the same team. I don't think the Supergiant Games team has grown or changed much from when working on Bastion. It is pretty much the core team of people that are still there. And I love to see it. That's kind of my intended goal for my company, is that I find people that are good, and we just keep helping each other become exceptional game after game after game, and carve out that little piece of the gaming community. Give them enough room to grow like a money tree. Yeah, exactly. They're money trees. That's it.
Then you have a problem because you have a pattern that they're not learning from
Mm-hmm.
and won't even acknowledge.
Yep.
So I liked Adam Savage's recommendation, which is understand that mistakes happen, stay flexible, go with options, and then look at it later and see,
Yeah.
is this a pattern? Is this something that needs to be corrected?
Introspect post-mortem, that's what it is. And I think you should be very introspective as a person and say, okay, we made this game, the game released, I thought certain design decisions were good, but were they? Which ones were bad? And why were they bad? And when were they made? Why did I think they were good when they were made? And how could I identify that they weren't good? Just introspect.
Can it be corrected? How are you going to deal with it? Worry about that later. Do not do that.
Yeah, don't get caught up in the moment like that.
Anyway, I loved that video, and I loved Q-tip. Quit taking it personally. I understood things you can do in your career, but later, not early, and that mistakes happen. Have options. Deal with it later. Great advice.
Absolutely great. Yeah,
Great channel.
I agree.
Highly recommended.
Sorry, that's a little loud. Yeah, I 100% agree. Those are great pieces of advice, and they are definitely transferable to game dev, 100%. And I've found a lot of these out the hard way. But you know what? You just keep going forward, and you don't give up, and eventually good things will come to you. Which Fallout games did Tim work on? 1 and 2. So why did he get hate for this vid? Because he gave that employee a talking to? I don't know why. I don't know. Maybe it was about the boss in the first story. But I don't think Tim was saying that. Okay, so like while I agree that the boss in the first story was putting you in a bad position by going around you, the employee was in a rough spot too. Did the boss in question have the power to fire, punish, or otherwise make that employee's life hell for disobeying him? Or could you have protected him from that boss for not doing what he told him to do? I don't think there's a perfect solution to that situation that he outlined. I think it sucked. I don't know if there's a perfect way to do it. But at the end of the day, the person above Tim has the authority, and the person below Tim does not have any authority. It's one of those things where you either need to confront it and maybe it gets fixed, or you get fired or put in your place. That's it. You either like deal with it, confront it, and I don't see any other situation to that. You write the intro Fallout 1, yeah. Did he make the lore? He did work on a bit of the lore, but I think I think he mentioned previously that everybody in the team contributed to the lore. It was just like that perfect, well-oiled team where somebody, of course, does have this say at the end of the day, but everybody was able to contribute a little bit and make the game better and better. I think your stories are a good example of why emotional detachment is so important in the workplace. I disagree. I disagree. My hot take is that it's okay to have your emotions tied up in your work. That's what passion is. The problem is that can be exploited, and it can make you react in ways that maybe you shouldn't react sometimes. I don't know. I think this is just one of those things where sometimes there are no perfect ways to solve a situation, and I don't know the solution to it. Yeah, it was a bad. It's like Tim says here. It was a bad situation, and I don't know how to solve it. You have a hot take too for people who say don't get attached to your game. For example, I say get attached. That shows that you care. Yeah, people. I think players feel passion. If you make the next corporate AAA game, people will feel that. And I felt that when I was playing Dragon Age Veilguard. I would much rather play a game with a bit of jank, but I feel like it was made with people who loved every bit about their game. Kingdom Come Deliverance was janky as all be, but there was so much passion dripping from every little detail in that game and every system that was made that I can forgive some of the bugs or a crash or two because I know that that game was made with love. Same thing with Stalker 2. I will end the video here. We can keep talking for a little while, but then I gotta go. But I'm gonna end the recording for people on YouTube there. That was a very long one. So guys, give Tim Cain a thumbs up and give that video a watch yourself. Thank you so much, Tim, for that. And again, thank you, Tim, for giving us permission to make these reactions. I hope that I don't. I'm hoping I'm adding a bit to these because they're like over an hour long each. But thank you so much. Thank you if you're watching on YouTube. See you on the next one. Bye bye, YouTube. Bye.